Hello and welcome to the BVB update for August 10th. I'm Stefan Butzko and in this format I cover Borussia Dortmund news and other shenanigans. And today is of course news conference day, which means there are a lot of quotes for me to translate and to give you. But I will start of course with the injury update, and Edin Terzic revealed today that the only two players who are definitely out are Sebastian Haller and Niklas Süle for Friday's match against Freiburg. Everyone else is currently training. He said Charlie Özcan only completed parts of yesterday's public training session, but he had a training session later that afternoon. We've got to be careful with our players, but Charlie is already moving well. So is Karim Adeyemi. We will have another check today to see how much he can train with the team, but there's hope that both will be available on Friday. And then he was also asked about Gio Reyna and Mathieu Morey and their status, and they said Gio Reyna and Mathieu Morey were out for a long time last year. Obviously, we're glad that they were with us during the preseason, but we also said from the outset that we'll take every day of safety over every day of risk. Both are moving well, and we're happy they played some minutes in the friendly against Antalyaspor. Both are in a good way, and we're looking forward to having them with us more often in the near future. And then, of course, there was a barrage of questions about Anthony Modeste. How else could it be, since he is the latest signing that Borussia Dortmund unveiled on Monday? And first of all, Terzic was asked about Modeste's chances to be in the starting 11 against Freiburg, where he said Anthony had his medical on Monday and then completed Tuesday's training session. He is fully fit and ready to go. He's a very good option for Friday. And then Terzic talked about the challenge of integrating Modeste on a short notice, where he said, of course, it's not easy, but he's already 34 years old. And we didn't sign him only for him to completely adapt his game. We signed him for the player he already was at 1. FC Köln and hope that he can continue where he left off. Under Steffen Baumgart, he was instructed to work very diligently, and that helped him achieve a fitness level that is probably better than ever. I don't think it will be too complicated for him to integrate into our team. Once it became clear that Erling Haaland was going to leave Dortmund, we concluded that we needed to add a striker that goes for goal rather than assists. We have a lot of creativity and pace in our team, but we need a player up front that can hold onto the ball for a couple of seconds or who can extend passes for teammates. Tony has been very effective in recent years in the Bundesliga, so we're glad to have him. And about the little tantrum that Cologne had when the news was reported on Sunday that Modeste would join Dortmund, Terzic said, I can understand the disappointment when you lose your top striker who scored 23 goals in all competitions last season. I think their frustration was about the timing of the news reports, because it happened right before their game against Schalke. However, we didn't leak it, so we aren't to blame for it. But as Tony said, he's getting the chance to play Champions League football and to compete for titles at 34 years old. That's a rare opportunity he wanted to seize. We understand that it wasn't easy for Modeste to leave Cologne because of all the love he received there. That sort of love allowed him to perform, and so it is now on us to show him the same love and trust. But Edin Terzic didn't only speak about Anthony Modeste, he also had a little diatribe about the lack of ball retention in the second half against Leverkusen, where he said, in the second half against Bayer Leverkusen, we won the ball in many promising positions, but we lost it 4 or 5 seconds later already. That meant that we had to chase after the ball again, which cost a lot of energy. It's important to improve the ball retention because otherwise you create a vicious cycle. You expend so much energy regaining possession that you're too exhausted to then retain it. We showed our guys certain plays during our video analysis, and we will emphasize possession play during the training session today. Freiburg will be just as aggressive as Leverkusen. They will try to hit us on the counterattack every chance they get, so we have to protect our own goal by keeping hold of the ball. And he also expanded on why Freiburg are such a tricky opponent, and there he said, quote, with Christian Streich, Freiburg have a coach who has done fantastic work since 2012. They continuously manage to replace key players with great talents from either their own youth ranks or with clever recruitment. They reached the DFB Pokal final last season and were in the fight for the Champions League places until the end and qualified for the Europa League. They continue to add new tactical elements to their game. They're extremely threatening on set pieces. Last season they scored the highest amount of goals after free kicks and corner kicks without having the highest amount of free kicks and corner kicks. So they are extremely efficient. Compared to last season, where they featured a very lethal left side with Guerreiro and Günther, they now added Ritsu Dorn on their right wing, who had a superb start to the season. If we want to fly home, we need to raise our game compared to our last performances. And he also talked about Yusuf Moukokou's development, which of course is also interesting to see how that continues now with Anthony Modeste on board. He said about Moukoko, quote, Moukoko has trained with the senior team since he was 16. He has been used to the highest level from very early on, and he's ready to play many minutes for the first team. At the same time, being Borussia Dortmund's number 9 isn't an easy task. If you're not scoring, people start counting the minutes. We do not want him to feel this sort of stopwatch around his neck quite yet, because as a 17-year-old, he must not feel burdened by this sort of pressure. Nevertheless, Yusufa has become a stronger player. He's dealt with multiple injuries last season, and currently he's on a good path of preventing further ailments. He's now ready to play senior football. He showed that in the Dortmund shirt, but also for Germany's under-21s. We're very happy with his development, but at the same time, there's still a lot of work ahead of him. And lastly, he was asked a general question about what kind of culture he wants to create within the team. And the answer he gave there was also quite interesting, so I'm including it here. He said, quote, Nico Schlotterbeck had a fantastic game against Leverkusen, but he had one astray pass where Moderhut had to be there to help. Similarly, Mats Hummels played really well, but in that one moment, him and Thomas Meunier were caught out by Patrick Schick, and then Gregor Kobel came to the rescue. That is what it's all about. We must help each other off and on the field. That's the culture we're striving for. And with that, we can move on to a report by Gazzetta dello Sport about Manuel Akanji maybe moving to Inter, who knows, but they are reporting about a war of nerves, unquote, saying that Inter are happy to wait until the end of the transfer window in order for Dortmund to drop Akanji's price tag. And in the same breath, I should also mention that journalist Ekrem Konur has reported that Inter are planning to make an opening offer of 17 million euros to Dortmund for Swiss defender Manuel Akanji. So with the transfer window closing on September 2nd, it would be very nice if any movement will come into the Akanji issue. And there are also emerging rumors about Raphael Guerreiro, so let's listen into that.
Bit of breaking news to bring you. Manchester City, we understand, are keen on the Borussia Dortmund left-back Raphael Guerreiro, 28-year-old Portugal international, one of several potential first-team options that the club are looking into at the moment. Remember, last week City, the champions, missed out on Marc Cucurella, who instead joined Chelsea, with City unwilling to pay the asking price for the Spanish left-back. So now it's a 28-year-old Portugal international who is on their radar. 189 appearances for Dortmund, 34 goals with 37 assists since joining back in 2016. A reminder that all the transfer news is on skysports.com.
So yeah, I don't really think it's going to happen, to be honest, because it's very late in the window and I don't think Dortmund would find an adequate replacement for Guerreiro. But then again, he is on his final contract here and maybe they want to cash in now and hope that they can make do with an alternative that I don't yet know. So we'll see. But of course, there are other quotes to report about from the club legend that is Peter Stöger, obviously the guy who took over from Peter Bosz and then led Dortmund into the Champions League together with Michy Batshuayi. And before he coached Dortmund, he did, of course, coach 1. FC Köln, so he knows what he's talking about when it comes to Anthony Modeste. And Stöger did say to Sportbild, quote, he can also score 20 goals for Dortmund, where he will have 3 times as many scoring opportunities. Dortmund needed a solution that works, and the chance of it working with Tony is very high. It's a savvy move with very little risk. And if you want to read more about Anthony Modeste and who he is, then I can once again recommend fearthewall.com because Joey Meyer had a little write-up about who the number 9 is, so look out for that. And we also had a nice little quote from Brinkhoff's Ballgeflüster yesterday. I don't think it's out yet, and of course it's sort of a lengthy talk with Charlie Oetschan and Nico Schlotterbeck, hosted by Nobby Dickel, and Sky moderator Sebastian Hellmann was also there. And yeah, it's a funny moment that happened when Sky moderator Sebastian Hellmann said that there's going to be a top match at Schalke soon on Saturday, and Nico Schlotterbeck then recanted their top matches at Schalke, which I think is hilarious and of course only brings him closer to my heart. And lastly, a shout out to the BVB pod, where I joined Jake and Carver on this relatively new show to break down the Modeste signing and of course the first win against Bayer Leverkusen, and previewed the Freiburg game and answered some listener questions. So if you want to listen, go to linktree/the BVB pod. So that's it for today, and actually until Monday, because my wife and I are taking a little vacation. So I'm afraid I can't do the BVB update until then. But nevertheless, please in the meantime, like, comment and subscribe. And of course, hoping that Dortmund can secure all 3 points in Freiburg. It will probably be a very tight match. and I'm very much looking forward to it to interrupt my beach hours watching that game. And yeah, until then, goodbye.